Welcome to the Roll for Crit News Roundup, where we talk about everything tabletop gaming that happened in the last week. Now, one of the big news stories that technically would count is the FTC taking on Amazon. That being said, everywhere else is going to be talking about it, and probably with some more experienced experts. So, for all the other gaming-related news stories they skip over, you're in the right place. So let's find out what else has been happening for the week of October 2nd, 2023. Last week, I talked about how AI art was being used in Terraforming Mars' newest expansion, and sort of just how this is going to be something we're going to hear more about as we progress further and AI art just becomes more ubiquitous in culture and technologies. Well, I didn't expect I'd be talking about AI stories next week, but not only do I have one story to talk about, I have two. First is going to actually be about Essen Spiel, which is happening later this weekend. And it has been turned out that some of the art that they're using is AI art. Now, to rewind a little bit, because I think it's important, earlier they released art for their new mascot, which was voted on and decided to be named Meeps. It was a cat done by Michael Menzel, and to my knowledge, I believe it's the first official mascot for Essen Spiel. And the reason I'm bringing this all up is there is new artwork that is on the tickets and advertising that has been reported to be AI art. Most of this is coming from a Board Game Wire interview I read, an article. I'll put a link down below if you want to know more. But they asked the people, like, what's going on? Where's the art? And I bring it up because a lot of AI art, as we talked with the Terraforming Mars thing, they're trained on a lot of different pictures. Now, sometimes people have been very specific and feed the AI programming a wide gallery if they want to fit like a specific artist's art style. Here, to my knowledge, and this is where I'm a little confused about, it sounds like the AI program they used they don't know what it was trained on. They just got AI art. But in one of their answers, they say they're very proud of Meeps and paying the artist for the right to use it. And I wasn't sure if they were implying that they paid the artist for the right to use their art for the AI programming. So I just wanted to lay that all out there. To my knowledge, the cat is not AI art, but the art, I'm going to have pictures in my box actually over there, is of AI art that is on the tickets and other promotional stuff that just shows people, a bit too happy to play board games. And obviously, this is a whole other issue of like, well, yes, it's not in the game, but if AI art's being using for all the advertising for the conventions, one of the two biggest conventions when it comes to board gaming, Gen Con and Essen Spiel, it's like, are they then approving of it? Which then brings us back, like, paying artists, avoiding them, and now we're dealing with not a specific game, but rather the advertisements. Like, maybe they're selling products with that. I don't know if this is just on their own ad stuff, but that's still an artist not being involved, so to speak. They, once again, didn't go too much into the process of like what program they used, or if they said, yes, we trained all the art on this one person, we asked for permission, something like that. So that brings up that end. While on sort of the other side of the spectrum, Backerkit just announced that they're going to now not allow any projects to occur that exclusively use AI art for its art. Now, they did want to clarify this meant something that art where only AI was used to generate it. We're not counting like if you used AI art to do content fill. If you ever used Photoshop, there's technically AI programming in there that helps like little bits and things. Like, they're not going to stop you from doing that. Like, you can only do hand draw. They're talking about, like the AI programming that we're more used to when we assume if someone says this uses AI art, it means I typed in funny game guy and had something generated from that. So there's another line, but this is the reverse, being drawn in the sand against AI art. So more and more, we're seeing companies take sides on this argument. We're seeing some people saying this is a technology we'll inevitably have to embrace and accept, while others are saying we shouldn't even be able to use it at all. Now, there are some people, I've seen some arguments for like, well, it's okay if hypothetically, let's take the Essen Spiel one, if they did use Menzel's artwork for all the generations and then said, hey, we will pay you a reasonable amount to use your art to make the AI art because that way maybe it's faster and you're still getting paid, something like that. I don't know. Like, that would be a bit more of a fair use of the AI art, because half the problem is when people say, well, what was it trained on? And when you shrug and say, I don't know, it sort of just means if you put any art out on the internet, there's a good chance AI are using it now for be it writing stories or for making art. And of course, throw in the fact that recently we just had the writer's strike in Hollywood wrap up, which did include I'm not sure rule's the right word, law, basically an agreement not to use AI writing for making scripts. So more and more we're seeing companies that have to make a hard stance of whether they are or are not using AI for their artistic endeavors. And with this story coming basically back to back with the previous Terraforming Mars, I'm not surprised with Backerkit's announcement that basically we're going to need to hear a similar announcement from every board game company or even the conventions to know their actual rulings on this, whether it be they just use AI art whenever they please, or they say they will use it if they make agreements with the artists that are being used to train the AI for the art. And by agreements, I mean payment. Or, like Backerkit, make sure that no one is using these to make sure there aren't any loopholes that we have yet to think of. Sticking a little bit with the writers and their fight not only to stop AIs from writing their scripts, but also to get fair compensation for their products on streaming services, Netflix has entered board gaming again, this time though not with a new game based on a property, but rather they are being sued. Netflix is being sued by the RPG company Evil Genius Games, who actually I had the chance to talk with back at Gen Con, over a currently canceled product, based on the newest Zack Snyder movie, Rebel Moon. This is a sci-fi movie from the combination of Netflix, Zack Snyder, and apparently Snyder said he really wanted this to go more than just a movie. In particular, he really wanted tabletop RPGs to be involved, which brought on Evil Genius. And they showed them the script. They made a deal like very early this year. And while the script, had general ideas, they hadn't fully fleshed out the world. And apparently, they know how to do RPGs. They've worked also on so many different movies. You can find already books for their everyday hero, but go into movies like King Kong or Pacific Rim. So they're like, all right, we're going to go all in on fleshing out this world. And apparently they made a huge world Bible that Netflix and Zack Snyder love so much. They're like, yeah, we're not only going to use this for the RPG, but we're going to use details of this and make it like canonically correct with the movie and any other tie-ins they plan to make. So very successful, a lot of work, something to be very proud about. Now at Gamma, Evil Genius Games wanted to, show off this product because they're working on it. They want to generate hype, as anyone does. So they showed off some images there. Now, according to them, Netflix not only they didn't say anything like, don't do it, don't show this. They also had some Netflix employees there with them to show off some of the images to a few of the retailers and people attending Gamma. Now, Netflix has responded saying that, no, we didn't want to show this all. This is proprietary hidden artwork. So therefore, we are terminating the agreement. It also seems Netflix tried to gain ownership or control of that World Bible from Evil Genius, which I believe is technically separate from the RPG. But obviously, with the RPG and showing how to build the world, it probably would have used a lot of the information from that for the RPG. There's a reason why, they helped make this. It wasn't just because they wanted to help make the movie. This was to help make the RPG as well. And then they also offered them $50,000 to basically just accept everything and move on. But Evil Genius did not accept those terms, so they're taking Netflix to court by suing them over multiple things. I'm going to have my phone here to read the exact terms because I'm sure, when it comes to lawyers and suing and stuff, you want the exact wording. We've got multiple claims, including alleged breach of contract, breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, and unjust enrichment. Now, from what I can tell, basically they're implying and saying that Netflix led them on, promising this nice big deal with this big movie and director that, is famous, regardless on your opinion on their movies, and then just pulling the rug from underneath them and just getting away with all the work they did. And possibly even, I think one thing I read, publishing their own RPG that would be not under their names and get accreditation and all those things. And of course, revenue. So this is what they are suing them for. I don't know whether the outcome is going to be Netflix. I don't even know if they can say like, the product's back on again. Maybe they could behind the scenes kind of deal. It might be Netflix's better case at this point. I don't know how much these things cost, but it's still really disappointing to hear. Now, I will admit, I'm a bit more biased and leaning towards Evil Genius side on here, and not just because they're the actual tabletop company in this fight. But I've seen some of their work and how they actually try to do a really good job of whatever property they're going into of like, how can we make this make more sense in an RPG playstyle? Everyone plays different characters, but in a canon sense. So I can't imagine that their RPG was something that felt like last minute rushed and simple. And the fact that they want and use their world Bible for their movie and possible other products. I don't know how much other Rebel Moon items, video games, etc. they have in the works, but that seems to imply that they already did a very good job. And I could imagine that there was a miscommunication with showing off some of the pieces of art. Like, even though they had Netflix employees there, maybe somehow they didn't know and there's some mix up. But it just seems Netflix is sort of going like burn the bridge, just destroying everything for this. I can't imagine those images somehow have completely destroyed what possibly could be this movie, or at least I would hope not. This movie should be able to stand even if there's maybe some pieces of artwork floating around out there. I was going to say some of the characters, but they might not even be of characters you see in the movie. So I just find it really weird that Netflix would do this if it wasn't for them thinking that they can get away with it, so to speak. However, this is innocent until proven guilty, and we'll see whether we see an actual resolution here, whether we'll actually see this RPG come to fruition and maybe some agreements are made behind the scenes, or if this lawsuit will be followed through and either Netflix wins or is forced to pay Evil Genius for all those breaches. The New York Toy Fair is a convention in which it's aimed specifically for those who sell toys as well as those who make them. And yes, this includes board games. Now, not every board game company appears there, but there are plenty that do, probably usually those who aim more towards a younger audience. This has been held in New York City since 1903, but that soon will no longer be the case. They have stated that after 2025, they are moving the convention to New Orleans. They are also changing up the date to earlier in the year, around January. Now, the reasoning behind this is, first, for the date shift, it is because it just fits better with everyone's like quarterly schedules, reporting and stuff. But it's also been noted that this moves it away from the larger conventions. So that may be one of the reasons why some board game companies aren't showing up there if they're just going to be at Essen a little while later. But in terms of location-wise, they stated there are a bunch of reasons, including the size of the convention hall, as well as the price for people to stay there and transportation, which does make sense as New York is a pretty expensive place. It is a little disappointing because, like I said, this has been there since 1903. So this is a big dramatic shift. And, it's a little sad to see it going, also it being much closer to me. This year, at the very least, it does seem to lean towards the idea of needing maybe new space or something, as two of the largest toy companies and people who make some card and board games as well, Mattel and Hasbro, were not present during this convention. And like I said, it's not a big place for a lot of board game companies either, though I have a feeling that might be more date related, but it could be location related as well. Regardless, if this is something you're interested in, whether it's because of board games, whether you are one of those people who makes games and would go to this convention, or sell games and go there to see what you should be selling, make sure to change your flight schedule to New Orleans and early on in the year after 2025. Our next story is about the Pokemon TCG and why we can't have nice things. Apparently, there was a collaboration with the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam and Pokemon. To celebrate their 50th anniversary, Pokemon was going to have a small little exhibit there, showing off some pieces of art featuring Pokemon in Van Gogh's style, as well as if you attended the event between September 28th to January 7th was the original range of this date, that if you participated in a little scavenger hunt, that you would get a special Van Gogh Pikachu. Now, this card was meant to be a fun little treat and gift for families and kids, something for you to visit the museum. You get a fun thing that maybe you're not as interested in Van Gogh initially, but through Pokemon you may be. But let's be honest, this is Pokemon, which means that people who are my age, the people who grew up with it, are going to want their hands just as much. We've seen what happens with Happy Meals, and unfortunately, that's what happened here. It turns out that the first few days, the museum was flooded with people taking all the merch, with many people seem to be implying that the merch is going to be grabbed up to be just resold. So not even the people my age who just want to have this because they like it, as well as all the cards already being used. The Pokemon Company actually issued an apology just a few days after that, saying this wasn't what it was supposed to happen. This is supposed to last till January 7th, and everything got sold out and snatched up. So we're going to be printing more of the Van Gogh Pikachu to distribute at Pokemon centers. I assume this still gives a lot of money to the Van Gogh Museum, but that does mean a lot of people who maybe are like, oh, I'll go in October to see this exhibit or do some stuff there, aren't going to be able to get anything. This unfortunately just goes to show what happens when these fun little events, when you try to make something to celebrate something, almost like the old Mew cards back when they were given out for one of the Pokemon movies, is now something more for you to try and monetize, collect as much as you can, and resell. I'm not saying everyone there went for resale, I'm almost certain. But it does seem to be, unless someone's grabbing multiple copies of the same thing, whether it be the cards, posters, what other kinds of knickknacks they had in the gift shop, for it to sell out in 2 days versus the, I should have counted this before, but if you count full months, like 1, 2, 3 full months in a few days, I can't imagine that's only just people picking up a poster or two that they may like as well as the card. So unfortunately, if you were hoping to go to the museum to pick up some stuff, you're going to be out of luck. But if you still want to get your hands on that card, more are going to be distributed at Pokemon centers. I don't know how common those are, so I guess try to keep an eye out on Pokemon TCG Twitter for when they announce the Pokemon Center near you, we'll be able to hand out those cards. Our next story is about trading card games, and as with the previous story, not having enough for people to get their hands on them. Disney's Lorcana was a huge success and sold out way too fast that barely anyone can get their hands on it, so they announced they were going to do a huge reprint wave for Chapter 1. Now, initially, I was saying that was going to be released in 2024. However, we do have some good news for American fans. For those outside of America, they said Europe, I assume elsewhere as well, they said that reprint wave is still in next year. But if you're in America, Disney's Lorcana should be reappearing on shelves, by the holiday season. So I assume November, maybe late October. They also have already stated that the Floodborne set, the next chapter, is already in the works for another reprint. I don't know if that means they are going to have the same amount of Floodborne as they did with the initial chapter, or they just assuming like we're going to get on this way ahead of schedule and make sure that there's plenty enough for that set as well. This is pretty good news as, you know, holiday season. That's when people like to buy a lot of things for family and kids. And Disney's Lorcana is probably going to be one of those really hot ticket items. So making it so it's in stores will be a good thing. However, if this appears right around Black Friday, I imagine all of it will sell out by Black Friday. So we'll find out and see how all that works here. And hopefully this will help fix somewhat of the issues that are currently happening with the availability of Disney's Lorcana. Now, for game announcements, Cartographers is taking all their maps and putting it in one map pack, so you can pick that up now instead of having to get them separately. Pictionary is taking on AI, going back to another story. This time, though, you're going to be playing Pictionary with an AI-used app trying to guess what you're drawing, so we'll see how people feel about that one. And then for the video game fans out there, you've probably been enjoying Baldur's Gate or Armored Core. Well, if you want to play an RPG featuring mechs, Lancer has been a hugely successful one, but it was a Kickstarter with the physical print run already out. You can buy digitally, but if you want that physical book, it's been announced that a second run of physical copies will be released later next year. Then Renegade has a bunch of more Hasbro titles now that they're going to be now re-releasing, and that's a big list for this one. They've got now Nexus Ops, Vegas Showdown, Risk 2210, and Risk Godstorm. So if you wished you had a new version of any of those games, they should be hopefully coming from Renegade Game Studios soon. The Undaunted games, which are World War II deck building games, are finally leaving that theme to go very far, far away. Their next game is going to be titled Undaunted 2200 Callisto, and is, if you can't tell from the name as well as the artwork, is sci-fi themed. Then finally, Gamer Trays, which is usually making, trays that fit inside board games, has announced a new folding game table. This game tables, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, is very similar to maybe the gray folding tables that I've seen. Almost everyone I know usually has one of those, especially if they live in an apartment. But now it's going to have an insert, cup holders, and it's going to have a nice, I don't think included, but you can get like nice felt inserts as well. And it will come much cheaper than most other pre-made game tables. But that is all the news we have this week. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, whether it's your opinions on the AI art again, or whether you have thoughts on how about collecting cards. Am I being too harsh about being able to get those Pokemon items there? Or do you think it's mostly people just trying to make a quick buck? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. But thank you so much, and I'll see you next time on the News Roundup.